the war, Obama's, which I'm sure you'll agree with me about, Obama overthrowing Gaddafi in Libya and leading to the migrant crisis into Europe was an absolute disaster. Let's also throw in there the attempt, right?
So and bringing in all the refugees to attack Americans.
Hold on, let me just finish my point. Let's also add in there the attempted regime change war in Syria, which we started, that led to 500,000 people dying. Let's also throw in there the war in Yemen, which we backed the Saudis fighting.
Don't forget the Arab Spring.
Something else like 500,000 somewhere in that ballpark also died. When you add up all of the numbers, you're talking about millions and millions of dead innocent people. What responsibility do you have? What responsibility do I have? What responsibility do you have? Are we fair targets now to be murdered because we haven't overthrown the status quo, as you just said? Why is it that we as Americans get to hold these standards against other nations which we would never dream of imposing on ourselves? The question is always asked, what's Israel supposed to do? Don't they have a right to defend themselves? Do all of these countries that we've slaughtered innocent people in, do they have a right to defend themselves? Do they have a right to come over here and kill innocent civilians? I would say no. They don't have a right to come kill innocent civilians. You have political grievances with the government class, but it does not follow, as Osama bin Laden or Bill Clinton or Barack Obama or George W. Bush would argue, that it then follows that we can inflict this collective punishment against people. If we're going to be the better ones, if we're going to say you're the Islamists, but we're the civilized people, if we're going to represent the best tradition of Western civilization, then the point would be that we don't believe in any of that. We don't believe that you can target innocent men, women, and children. That's what separates us from the savages.
Israel is not targeting innocent women and children.
They absolutely are.
I am so excited for this video. I've never seen this one, so my video editor sent me this. She does great stuff, by the way. So Dave Smith was in a debate with, I think Laura Loomer is her name, and Adam from PBD Podcast. Dave Smith, I love this guy. Excellent commentator, especially on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Laura Loomer, I don't know. I think she's only famous on X. I don't really know too much about her. Adam Sosnick, we all know and hate. Worst guy on PBD Podcast. Literally destroys the quality of that show. But let's continue. I want to see Dave destroying these people. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel.
Well versed in the Israeli propaganda, but the truth is,
if you actually propaganda.
Okay, the truth it is. The truth is that if you actually,
their own charter.
Okay, well let me talk for a second.
I am letting you talk, but it's not propaganda. I'm not going to let you lie and say that it's propaganda.
No, I'm
this
not
is their
lying.
charter.
What I'm saying
this doesn't come from Israel.
Let me trap
I
you
didn't
for a
say
second.
that
Go
didn't
ahead,
come from Israel. I'm saying the Israeli propaganda is when you say Israel's offered them 98%, 99% of what they want, and they just won't take it. All this time, Israel is dying to give them a state. Just on the face of it, doesn't that kind of sound ridiculous?
But whether it was the Oslo Accords, whether it was
have you ever seen Netanyahu's videotape when he didn't know he was being videotaped, when he talked about the Oslo Accords? So what did he say? He basically said that he snuck so many poison pills into the Oslo Accord that it was completely unworkable.
But he wasn't part of the Oslo Accord. That was Yitzhak Rabin at the time.
No, he was in the government. Yitzhak Rabin was the prime minister.
But he wasn't the prime minister.
But he was talking about how Israel ultimately got to decide what every military zone and danger zone was, and there was never. And then he just defined it as everywhere, as the entire West Bank. They never really made the offer. And if you care to go look into the history of this, you can figure this out. There's a problem with radical Islam.
But it's not radical, it's Islam.
Okay, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, shut up. No, it's not. If it was, there's 2 billion Muslims in the world. Trust me, the world would be a much worse place if that was actually how Islam is.
I'm not denying that there's a problem in the Islamic world.
And it's so disrespectful. Sorry, I know I keep stopping this, but how can you imagine if someone said that about the Jewish religion? Oh no, it's just all Jews. Literally, you get called anti-Semitic, you get canceled, all this stuff. Now they're putting a bill out that could potentially be a crime. It could be illegal to say something like that about the Jewish religion. And she's just some random person saying, oh, Islam is 2 billion people. You just categorize it into one bucket. Idiot.
I'm not denying, obviously, you could look through the Islam. I'm a libertarian. I believe in natural rights and individual liberty. Obviously, I see problems in the world. However, if you're going to look at this as an American or as somebody who's supporting the Israeli point of view, and you're going to say, well, look at these savages. They're just so barbaric. Does it not give you pause for a moment that Israel, the United States of America, have for decades been intentionally strategically and explicitly supporting the most radical elements of Islam. That America has supported Saudi Arabia, the biggest exporter of Wahhabism in the world, that they've funded, armed, and trained Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and that it was, and I noticed this didn't get a response at all, that it was Israeli policy to support, prop up, and fund Hamas.
Okay, then, who was propping up radical Islam 1,400 years ago?
Yeah, but okay,
no,
so you don't want to respond
question.
to what I just said.
I just responded to you.
The
United States of America is not 1,400 years old.
So what was radical Islam 1,400 years ago? Like, if she's talking about wars, I mean, all the religions went on wars. We didn't have nation states back in the day. It was basically generally religions against religions.
Such a cop-out. It's such a cop-out. Yes, you didn't respond to what I said at all.
You just said
why don't we do this? Hold on.
14,000 years old.
Why don't you respond to his point and then ask him the question?
I did
Why don't you address
just
his point
respond.
and then ask your question?
Actually, just what I
He
said.
Honestly, Adam's not bothering me too much in this video. This is one of the few things he's good at. Just moderate debates, bro. Stop giving your input on PBD podcast and ruining the show.
He said, oh, we don't want to think about, the way that these people feel because of wars that have been, inflicted upon them by the United States of America, the war on terror, and,
No, that's not what I'm saying.
But that is kind of the line of thinking that you're taking,
No, it's not.
right?
You're not responding to what I said. If you're going to say that radical Islam, or as you call it, just Islam, is this problem, then how do you feel about the fact for the last, let's say, 60 years, the United States of America and Israel has explicitly funded, for stated strategic reasons, the worst elements of radical Islam? Hamas, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Wahhabism, and they've said they're doing it for a reason, to undermine their competing, interests in the Muslim world. How do you feel about that? Can you criticize Israel at all? Were they wrong to support Hamas?
I can criticize Israel, but
were they wrong to support Hamas?
This is an irrelevant question because
you won't answer it. You won't say it's wrong to support Hamas. Is it wrong if Iran supports Hamas?
I have obviously said that it is wrong to support Hamas, but
so it was wrong when Israel did that.
The question doesn't really make any sense because when you think about it,
how does it not make any sense if Netanyahu was supporting the terrorist group?
Israel has a right to.
See, when you're on the side of truth, it's just so easy. Everyone can see right through Laura Loomer right now. It's just a lot of times when you got a lot of evil in your heart, that's when you make excuses for yourself. It's such a simple question. Like, how is it okay for anyone to fund Hamas? Well, if Iran does it, it's horrible. But if Israel does it, she doesn't want to answer. It makes no sense.
Defend itself. The Jewish people have a right to exist, and Jewish lives matter.
But no one's arguing with that.
No, but there are people who are
arguing
with this.
Okay, well, no one here is arguing with that.
The Democrat Party doesn't seem to think that Jewish lives matter.
The Democrat Party is going to support Israel. Joe Biden is going to write a blank check to Israel, and you know it, and I know it, and you know it. What you said before, of course Israel has a right to exist. Israel has a right to defend themselves. Jewish people have a right to defend themselves. But Palestinians also have a right to exist. They also have a right to defend themselves. And if we're going to just ignore that entire half of the equation, then we're never going to be having an honest conversation.
But you should tell that to Hamas because nobody in Israel said that Palestinian lives don't matter. Nobody in Israel said that Palestinians don't have a right to exist.
No, they
I've
just
been to
kill
Israel.
them.
I don't know if you've ever been to Israel.
Hey, so where's the Palestinian country? Where's the two-state solution?
Israel, but you have.
You're saying nobody there has said that they're animals?
No,
nobody has said that they don't have rights?
In terms of their.
There are people, not that many of them now, but there are people in Palestine who were the original people there. And so, yes, of course, it's worth it to at least recognize that this happened. It was wrong, and there are going to be resentful feelings about that. But no, I wouldn't say we should give it back.
It was wrong that Israel was surrounded by Islamic aggressors on every single border.
They weren't surrounded.
Yes,
they settled there. They chose that they wanted to have a Zionist project and go.
It is wrong. No, but you're talking about a Nakba, I assume, right? And so the reality is that this idea that, the Jews just drove all of these Palestinians away. No, there were many Palestinians who said, you know what, we don't want to be casualties of a war because of all these invading Islamic armies that are going to surround.
Because this is, I think, really important and gets to the crux of the matter. So number one, I'd say, okay, if you fled, some of them were forced out, some of them fled. We know all this from the historical record. Regardless, if some people start shooting outside my house and I take my family and run, I don't think that means that they own my house now. But,
but who was shooting?
Hold on. Well, Israelis in many cases.
But that's
in
a big part, right? In many cases.
In many cases, I'm not saying all, because I'm not being black and white here. Okay, but let me make my point. This is the bigger point. Here's the bigger point, because I think this is the height of the whole debate here. What you said before is you go, look, yeah, they won the war, and they get to write the history books, and they get to control the land. That's the way of the world, right? That was literally what you just said.
But that is,
so,
that is the way of the world.
Okay, fine. But then own that. If you're just saying might makes right, and that's, okay, fine. But then accept this. You don't get to look at these Islamists and say you're a bunch of barbarians, because all you're saying is might makes right. And you know what their response to that is? October 7th. That's their response. You say might makes right? Okay, well then guess what? We're going to use all the might we have. It's exactly what you're saying. But I just asked if that's what you were saying, and you said yes.
But here, right? And so Muslims are only allowed to attack when they're in a position of strength. And so if they're in a position of weakness, they have to retreat for 10 years, okay, according to the Prophet Muhammad and the guidelines laid out in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. So this was planned. We know that this was planned.
Oh, I assume she knows Arabic, huh? What is she talking about?
And we know that,
just taking out total historical context here.
There were Muslims both in Gaza. We know that the Iranians were funding Hamas and Hezbollah operatives, and that there was widespread coordination. Okay, they were following Islamic doctrine to carry out this attack on Israel on October 7. And so it's not as simple as just saying, oh, let's look at the history and let's look at the land dispute.
What about Jewish people using Jewish doctrine to get rid of everyone on the land just because they think God told them it's theirs? What about that?
We need to have a conversation and start educating people about the barbarism of Islam. And they need to understand what the Treaty of Hudaybiyah is. Our politicians need to...
Oh, she's pissing me off. I did not know. I've seen her on X before. I did not know she's such an Islamophobe. Oh my God. So racist.
Understand this as it relates to foreign policy so that we don't spend billions of dollars, trying to implement peace in the Middle East, because there's never going to be peace. There's never going to be peace in the Middle East.
Do you think we've been too soft on the Muslims over the last 20 years? We got to really understand that Islam is a threat and do what? Fight 7 wars?
No, I'm not in favor of going to war.
But who reflects on the last 20 years of American foreign policy and goes, the problem is we never recognized that Islam was a threat. We've never done it. We've just been leaving them alone this whole time. Maybe we should bomb 7 of their fucking countries for 20...
But that's the problem, Dave. But that's the problem, right? You had George W. Bush in the aftermath of 9/11 who said that Islam is not our enemy, right? And then he invited...
That was his problem? That he said one nice thing about Islam.
No, but
not that he launched stupid catastrophe wars.
But we wouldn't have... That when you have an actual understanding of Islamic doctrine and the fact that these people don't want peace, they don't want to coexist with other people, okay? They want you to either believe in Islam, they want you to be one of them. It's convert, submit, or die.
All of them? So that's all of them? So
how much blood was spilled trying to export democracy
Nobody is denying on this panel that it was an absolute catastrophe.
Hold on, Laura. That don't believe in human rights.
Laura,
you don't believe in human rights.
I do believe in human rights.
How many Palestinian babies can be killed? Is there a limit to it? Is there a limit where you go?
We don't know.
So don't tell me you believe in human rights.
We don't know how many. We don't really know how many people have actually been killed.
Nobody here is denying. Laura, let me say this.
Is there a limit though, where you go? That's too much.
Relax.
Is there a limit? Is there a number of Palestinian babies?
I'm going to ask you a question because you guys aren't hosting the panel.
That's not what I'm saying. Oh, so it's all their fault.
Nobody's denying. So how should Israel deal with the fact that they're shooting missiles, bombs out of hospitals and schools at innocent civilians? How should Israel react to that?
Okay, so there's several things to that. But what should the response be, say, to October 7th? I would say that primarily, first of all, there were active hostages involved immediately. So I would say the first thing, much like what you do when, look, if a hostage, if there's a bank robber and he has a machine gun and he takes 12 hostages up with him, the response is not blow up the building. The response is you first negotiate, try to get every innocent person saved, and then you go and try to enact justice against that person while trying to not kill as few innocent people as possible in the process.
Makes sense.
But the immediate Israeli response should have been this. Look, it should have been fortify your borders, have a true investigation to find out how the hell it is possible that the most prepared fortress of a country allowed the most surveilled area in the world, which is Gaza, to commit what the most obvious attack would have been, like, this was not 9/11. This was not like, I know they could say George W. Bush got that one piece of intelligence that said planes into buildings, but planes into buildings was still a pretty wild thing to actually have happen. People crossing over the border from Gaza to kill Israelis is what you always had your eye on. So how in the hell did this possibly happen?
I told you earlier how it happened.
Well, okay, one second. How in the hell did this possibly happen? How was the response time so long? What exactly happened here? Let's look into some of the more gruesome details about what really went on, what some of the firsthand accounts are, and then you should absolutely hold Benjamin Netanyahu and the Likud party accountable for this strategy of propping up Hamas and funding them that blew up in their faces. This is just what the Times of Israel piece the day after, I believe it was either on the 8th or the 9th, it was either 1 or 2 days afterwards, said, well, Benjamin Netanyahu's strategy blew up in his face. If there was a SWAT team, let's say a murderer, serial killer, he's on the run from the cops, and he's held up in a school, and they're like, okay, he's in this elementary school, and then the local police or your state troopers or even the FBI said, all right, well, here's our plan. We're going to blow up the school. How'd you feel about that? Would you say, oh, that's law enforcement. They're doing a great job?
That is such a good example. People don't realize how crazy it is what Israel is doing to the Palestinians because people are desensitized. And people actually don't consider the Palestinians real people. They don't consider them humans, they consider them barbarians. So when you dehumanize someone, people just stop caring. So, think about it. Because they think there's armed militia in a building, they don't care who else is in that building. They just blow up the whole building. Could you imagine something like that in America? Imagine. No one could do something like that here. How are people so normalized with it? I don't understand.
No, you would say that is unacceptable. And in fact, if they did that, you would not sit here and pretend that they cared about human rights or they really were trying to not kill kids, but there was one bad guy in there, right? But see how that's totally acceptable when it's in Palestine? Mm-hmm. Now, all I'm saying is this. Look, even if you want to come at from the most pro-Israeli point of view, where you have no value on Palestinian life, let's say you don't care, whatever. We got to kill Hamas, so we're going to kill all those kids if you have to.
I never said that.
I'm not saying that. Listen to what I'm actually saying. Let's say that's your attitude. Still, go in with your eyes open and understand what that's going to be perceived as from the other side. Because if anybody ever had that attitude with my kids, I know what my attitude toward them would be. And you can say, oh, this is just, Islam is a crazy religion and we're going to blame them for everyone. I don't know. I'd feel the exact same way if anyone had that attitude with my kids. I'd be ready to join up with whoever the craziest group was who wanted to go get those people back. And likewise, you see the same thing after October 7th. What is everybody like you who supports Israel saying? Well, I'm ready to join up to go kill as many of them as we got to kill to get rid of this problem. Maybe there's a lot more similarities than differences between these two sides.
I'd like to counter this. Because watch your mother and your father get blown up. You're probably going to have a spirit of revenge and you're going to have deep-seated hatred and want to kill. Anybody would want to kill somebody that killed their family member, right? I think that that's just human nature. Whether it's, a drunk driver, whether it's an act of terrorism, whether it's a murder, whether it's, whatever it may be.
Vengeance is...
It's vengeance, okay? Vengeance
So do you think that plays a part in the Palestinians' hatred for Israelis?
I think that it may play a part when, people are
that's
losing...
Something.
I think
that's something. We're making progress here. You can at least admit that maybe that's part of it.
But I also think that it's a serious problem when from the moment a baby is born to a Palestinian, they are being taught Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before.
Hey, look. We just had a moment. We just had a moment of some agreement. So I think that's disgusting also. So look at that. Look, we had a moment of agreement.
I don't think there's ever going to be peace in the... I don't ever think there's going to be peace between these people.
Laura.
Just literally, let me just give you a second. So you acknowledge that what Israel has done to the Palestinians might be at least somewhat of a contributing factor to them hating them.
It's not. I'm not saying just what they've done.
9/11 happened to us, right?
I think a lot of what Palestinians have done to Israelis as well, because
I know it's tough for you to admit but we came to a moment of agreement there. Listen,
innocent Jews
9/11
who are being killed
yes,
too.
No one's denying that. This is okay, fine. 9/11 happened to us. What was the American attitude after 9/11? We gave George W. Bush a blank check.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want to do. Drop bombs on whoever the hell you want to drop bombs on, because we are pissed off because we got hit and someone else has to suffer for this. Or was it really the people who did it? Is it just innocent people who are
And now
dying?
we're
in the rest?
suffering. We're the
Whatever.
terrorists.
Okay,
We are the
fine.
terrorists in our country.
The Muslim world has had 1,000 9/11s. And if you sit here and go, look, just imagine, try to imagine, and be really genuine here, okay? Because we're going to see it, we're so much better than the Islamic world. And you know what? I generally do think we are. But even us, who's so much better than them, imagine, not one 9/11, but 1,000 9/11s happened here. What would that look like? And then let's say after 1,000 9/11s happened here, let's say whoever, Iran did it. And then Iran invades and they overthrow our government. And they prop up their own government. And now they rule us. What do you think the toughest right-wing militia members in America would be doing? They'd be throwing Molotov cocktails through their government building. They'd be running up, suicide bombing themselves. And I bet they'd yell something about Jesus before they did it too. Because they'd probably start clinging to their religion. So I'm just saying that, like, if we're unwilling in this debate, in this divide, to try, make a real effort to put ourselves in their shoes and go, what would we do in that situation? We're just basically like your neighbors all decided they were going to come in and rip your children apart and rape your wife in front of you and make you watch and then beat you to death. And this happened over and over and over again.
This is going on where exactly?
In Eastern Europe, most of the old Russian Empire, Poland, Ukraine, Russia, all these areas.
And it's happening now,
horrific.
too.
And this
Is
was
this still an issue?
it's not happening now.
No,
like
it actually is, though. Did you see
not like it was happening
did
then.
you see
Let's
the
not
videos?
trivialize
No,
that.
I'm not.
So the response, that Zionism was a response to that. And what's really interesting is if you read the early Zionists, they didn't talk that much about the Arabs. And first off, none of them had ever been to Palestine. They didn't really know, but they actually talked, when they did mention the Arabs, they talked about them in kind of friendly terms because they liked the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was kind of cool. They let Jews work. They let them practice their religion as they wanted to. They were certainly much better than the Russian Empire was to them. And so it was almost like not like an afterthought, but it was like, look, we're reacting to that. And so we're going here. And whatever has to happen to the people who are happening, whatever, we need our own state because we can't live like this anymore, which is a reasonable conclusion, at least needing your own state from that. And then, of course, after the Holocaust, it was like, game over. We're doing whatever we have to do this. I'm just making the point that, look, people react to this level of violence. And if you want to understand what's going on in the world, if you want to understand what motivated Osama bin Laden to hit us on 9/11, if you want to understand what motivates Hamas to hit Israel, you got to look at this or you're never going to get it. And this is the final point I'll make, because when you talk about these pogroms are happening all over the world, look, the point of 9/11, Osama bin Laden's goal, which he explicitly wrote about, was what? It wasn't just to kill some Americans in the Twin Towers. It wasn't just that he thought if we took down the towers, that would destroy the United States of America. His expressed goal was to get us to invade Afghanistan. He was trying to recreate what we trained him to do in 1979 to the Soviet Union, to lure us into Afghanistan, to bankrupt us. And look at this. And then George W. Bush said, I'll do you one better, Osama. I'll invade Iraq also.
Yeah.
And look at us. Look,
Two for the price of one.
20 years later, and I'm not saying our country hasn't exactly collapsed, but I bet all three of us and everyone in this room and everyone watching here would agree. Man, our country sure is in trouble.
Well, you're also kind of forgetting the part where he wrote about, Islamic global domination.
Yes, he was an Islamist. Yes. No,
I know,
Laura,
you conveniently leave that part out.
No,
though.
I'm not leaving anything out. I'm just focusing on something else that really matters. Obviously, he was an Islamist. Like, what is that? Yes, of course. Osama bin Laden was a radical Islamist, fundamentalist. The point is that there was a strategy here, okay? And with this Hamas attack, there's also a strategy. And you know what the strategy of this was? This wasn't just a bunch of barbarians. This was, there were barbarians, but this was a very sophisticated attack from land, air, and sea, right? All coordinated against the fortress of the world, and they pulled it off. And what was the point of this attack?
They want us to go to war with Iran.
To get Israel to do exactly what they're doing right now and turn the whole world opinion against them, which is exactly what's going on. You're seeing marches in the hundreds of thousands across America, North America, Europe, the entire Muslim world. Listen, even from the most pro-Israel point of view, I hope everyone here recognizes the Israel's existence is under more threat right now than it has ever been in my lifetime. Other Arab countries are going to get involved. This is something that hasn't happened since the late 60s and 70s. There's a real chance of it right now because 100% of their populations are against this.
And so the fact
Are you saying that a Muslim should not be able to serve in the U.S. Congress?
I'm saying that it should be illegal to take your oath of office on the Quran. I think that
So
it
then
should
if
be
a
illegal.
Muslim took their oath on the Bible,
Yeah,
that would be
they
They
okay?
should take your oath
Exactly.
on the Constitution.
But so why would that be?
still have
But they'd
the
still be a
same beliefs,
Muslim.
though.
This is the
Right.
dumbest, most superficial
It's
thing.
not, it's
So if they
not.
just don't
It's
take
not.
the oath, then they won't hate Jews anymore or something?
No, but I'm trying to make the point that we shouldn't have any jihadists in Congress because their views and what they believe in is completely incompatible with
that's all
Western
Muslims, right?
civilization.
How about we also make the rule that no one in Congress should be should be a Zionist or be paid by AIPAC? How about that? Because it should be America first, not Israel first, not anyone first. It should be America first. Why don't we make that rule? I think it makes a lot more sense to me.
Well, if it's
That's what
if
you just said.
Yeah, look. And
So why would you run away from Adam's point? Should
I'm
Muslims
not
be
running
allowed
away.
to serve? No,
Well,
you just don't want to say it.
I'm not going to
'cause-
say
right.
that we should ban all Muslims from serving in Congress,
But you just said all Muslims hate Jews.
if you were a devout Muslim, if you were
Okay,
a
so
devout
all
Muslim,
should all
Yet, how much of our government is Jewish people?
devout Muslims be banned from serving in Congress?
well, if I could have my way, I would probably say yes.
Okay, there.
I would
Well,
say yes.
at least you didn't dodge the question.
I'm not even going to
All right.
dodge the question. I would just say yes.
finally did.
Because
All
I don't
right.
want anti-Semites having access to classified information, and I don't want anti-Semites
So that's
serving
the
in positions
standard.
of
You
power.
can't hate Jews and be in Congress.
You can't be a Hamas supporter. You can't
you
openly
just said
support Islamic
anti-Semites.
terrorism.
Okay.
No, I didn't say anti-Semites. I don't
That's
have
what
a
you just
problem
said.
necessarily with the viewpoints, right? I have thick skin. I can get over some of the things that Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar have said about Jewish people. But what I don't like is their open association with groups like ISIS and the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas, which have all been documented and proven. Okay,
Listen,
and it is true.
Barack
they
Obama
refuse.
funded ISIS.
I'm not talking about
and
Barack. I'm
John
talking
McCain
about these
supported
elected
him doing
officials.
it.
And
Let's
so we
go
want
at
to talk
what
about
actually matters.
anti-Semitism. This is why
You're talking- 'cause you're
you have January 6th political protesters right now who are rotting away in jail cells because they went inside the Capitol. But it's okay for Rashida Tlaib because she wants to cry Islamophobia and wants to pretend that she's a victim because she's a Palestinian, she's a Muslim, and we can have a full-blown Hamas surrection. This is unacceptable. So when you talk about scratching the surface, no, politicians on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, have given it a pass. You didn't need to scratch the surface. These people were always Jew haters from the beginning. I exposed it 6 years ago and paid the price of being debanked. I was demonetized. I was shut down on every single social media platform. I was banned from food delivery apps.
Wait, hold on. Why is she acting like the Palestinians in the world have a lot of power, not the people, not Jewish people, not the Zionists? Aren't they the ones that control the media and everything? Like, what is she talking about?
For trying to blow the whistle and prevent something like this from happening
all right,
6 years
that sucks.
ago.
Oh my
Joe
God,
Biden's
it's such
administration-
nonsense, dude.
I wish-
Dick Cheney is who drives policy, not Rashida
And the
Tlaib.
pal-
and the
but
policy
my
AOC
point-
does have her finger on the pulse of a lot of the
Well,
woke
yeah,
left.
she's
So, I mean,
she's got a
it's not like-
popular TikTok channel,
I will
but I'm
say
talking about
my
the
point-
actual policy that gets through.
We need to
the
condemn the
policy has
Democrats'
been
platforming
funding
of these things.
Israel. Who's the country who we've, with the exception of Ukraine, just for the last year and a half, who's the country who we've given the most foreign aid to?
Right,
It's
and
Israel,
speaking of
by
Ukraine-
far. Who's next after that? Oh, the countries that we pay off to be friends with Israel.
Speaking of
this
Ukraine,
idea that the government
Hamas
is run.
terrorists, the Hamas terrorists.
And you
were
can't
showing,
respond to that either,
No,
I'm
but
sure.
Speaking of Ukraine, I'm opposed to all money going to Ukraine.
Oh, I thought she was going to say I'm opposed to all money going to other countries, which is what Republicans say, but then they're okay with Israel.
I don't know if you saw
But that's
these
not
videos
the point
as well.
of what I was saying. You're completely dodging the point here. You're trying to paint this picture that the U.S. Federal government is run by these people who hate Israel, when meanwhile, Israel is the country who's received more foreign aid than any other country.
Our
and
country
the other
right
ones,
now is currently run by a bunch of Jew haters. I will say that.
Are you serious? Like, are you blind? Our country is literally run by people who are paid off by AIPAC. And also, just a reminder, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Do your part. We are one of the fastest growing channels on this subject. And if you really want to help support the channel, become a member. It's only $2.99 a month. If you're a member, you get access to my videos before anyone else. Let's continue.
and they still give Israel
I
more
will
foreign
say
aid than
that
everyone. What a weird coincidence.
Israel's, but there's 15 million Jews left on this planet, okay? And there's 2 billion Muslims. And with the amount of Jew hatred that's taking place and the fact that we can't even get every single member of Congress to agree to censure a member of Congress who supports Hamas, which I just read their charter says they want to kill Jews and they want Israel to completely be obliterated, what does that mean for the global population of Jewry?
You're talking about Rashida Tlaib, who was censured by 100% of Republicans,
right.
but only 20% of Democrats.
Okay, fine, so they didn't vote to censure her.
No, but
What's the policy?
But listen, they'll eradicate the 15 million Jews left on this planet, and then who are they going to come for next?
None of this is happening. Let's get real.
Happening.
Let's get back.
It is happening.
What's happening? The idea that listen. Gaza's the only ones at real threat of being eradicated right now. And the only threat to the state of Israel is if they continue down this path. The truth is that Israel, talk about how radical Islam is, Israel has made peace with Egypt, they've made peace with Jordan, they've made peace with Saudi Arabia, they've made peace
Not yet.
No. When I say they've made peace, I mean they haven't been at war with them. I'm not saying they signed onto one of these dumb Trump Abraham Accord deals, which is BS anyway. We can get into that if you want. But I'm just saying they're not at war. They haven't gone to war with any of these countries. There's one little sliver of Muslims who they haven't made peace with, and that might have something to do with the fact that they've been occupying them since 1967.
And yet none of those Muslims...
I mean, there's a lot of reasons for that.
These Palestinians are so innocent. Why is it that every 55 Muslim-majority countries don't want them?
What's interesting about that is that it's kind of funny to be like...
Maybe they know how uncivilized they are.
Isn't it like, it's not an excuse to just be like, if you were like, hey, you're being brutal to these people and they're not at peace with you, and you go, well, other people are being brutal to them. But I'll tell you, part of the reason... They don't want them, but why don't they want them? Well, part of the reason, and there's many... Part of the reason is that, they're bribed by the U.S. government. But aside from that, is because they know that if they were to take all of these Muslims in, that represents Israel getting 100% of what they never had a right to get anyway. And that the truth is that a lot of these people, as probably all of us would, they feel like they have a right of return to this land that was historically theirs. In this moment, just try to imagine if instead of going on mass killing sprees and just slaughtering innocent Muslims by the millions over the next 20 years, imagine we had just done the special ops missions in Afghanistan. We had trapped Osama bin Laden in Tora Bora when we could have in late 2001, and we decided to let him go so George Bush could fight his war in Iraq. Imagine we had done that and then called the whole thing off. And then we had said, all right, look, we took a real hit here, but we get what the grievances of the other side were. And that doesn't mean we're not going to try to kill the people who killed us. Once you do that, you cross the line. We're trying to kill you. But we're not just going to start slaughtering innocent people over this. Come off like a hippie here, but I actually think I'm in good standing with conservative right-wing tradition, where what America is supposed to be is a city on a hill, not engaged in entangling alliances, not the empire of the world. Actually, maybe that's the most conservative thing you could say as an American. But we had an opportunity to do something. And so what I think Israel could have done here, and would do if America pressured them to, because all it takes is America saying, we're not going to back you on this unless you make an actual move for peace, is they could have had an opportunity to say, we're going to rise above this. We're going to demonstrate that we have respect for Palestinian life. We do not have any respect for the people who are responsible for this attack. We're going to do everything we can to kill them. But we're moving toward an actual peaceful solution here. We're giving you a real proposal of a two-state solution, not like the BS Oslo Accords. We're actually offering you what you want. Okay, you guys want to be your own government? You can be your own government. We will stop controlling the electricity and the utilities and your airspace and your water space and your ports of entry. We're not going to control that anymore. We're going to let you be your own government, but now you are responsible for what your government does going forward. Now, I'm not saying this would be perfect. I'm not saying that what's happened over the last 100 years didn't happen. But at some point, we've got to stop perpetuating this cycle. And what Israel's doing right now, look what Hamas did.
I mean, Trump did try to do that on his way out with the Palestinian prosperity plan that he had.
Okay, well, he had 4 years and he didn't do any of it. So,
honestly, I'm actually very thankful for Dave Smith for doing this debate, because in all reality, he's doing this debate for viewers and for people who aren't aware of the situation and what's actually going on. He's actually shifting mindsets and opinions, which I really appreciate, because at the end of the day, the person he's debating, Laura Loomer, whatever her name is, she's arguing in bad faith. They're not changing either of each other's opinions. He's really just doing it for the audience, and I do respect that. I appreciate that.
All I'm saying is that what Hamas did, what did it result in? More Israeli violence toward them. And what is this violence going to result in? We all know what it will. More violence on the other side. At some point, you have to try to break that cycle. That we did that. How can we sit here and condemn their people without at least condemning our own governments who we have at least some degree of impact over, not that much, but at least some degree of influence, and not condemn them for supporting these very terrorist organizations. And at every single turn, you know why we supported them? Because they were always the enemy of the secular nationalists in the Islamic world. And we didn't want them to have their own power. And so we supported the Islamic radicalists because we knew that they would undermine them. And in many cases, undermine the commies also was part of the goal. But anyway, I don't know how you can look at the situation in Israel, take the complete pro-Israel position, the complete anti-Hamas position, and not say Benjamin Netanyahu's explicitly stated strategy of supporting Hamas blew up in his face. And man, can we not learn a lesson from that and never do it again?